Russian troops are focusing efforts on conducting offensive actions in 5 directions, such as Lyman, Bakhmut, Avdiivka, Marinka and Shakhtarsk. Ukrainian defenders have repelled over 40 enemy attacks in the past 24 hours. The relevant statement was made by the General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine on Facebook, and Ukrinform correspondent reports. Over the past day, Ukraine's Air Force has launched 1 strike on enemy personnel, ammunition and military equipment clusters. Ukrainian missile and artillery units hit 3 Russian command posts. Meanwhile, Russian troops launched 17 air strikes and opened fire with multiple launch rocket systems MLRS 33 times. Casualties among civilians were reported. According to the General Staff, the threat of Russian missile and air strikes is persisting all over Ukraine. In the Volyn, Polishcha, Siversky and Slobozhansky directions, the operational situation remained rather unchanged. Belarusian military units continue completing missions in the areas bordering with Ukraine. Some Russian military units are also remaining within the territory of Belarus. The enemy is maintaining military presence within the border areas of Russia's Bryansk, Kursk and Belgorod regions. Over the past day, Russian troops have opened fire on the Chernihiv region's Yenjulivka, Polihonivka and Remyachka, the Sumy region's Stukalivla and Pavlivka, and the Kharkiv region's Kazaka Lopan, Hoptivka, Neskuchny and Kotny. In the Kupiansk direction, the enemy launched artillery strikes on the Kharkiv region's Krasny Persh, Novomlinsk, Vorokna, Zapadna and Berestov. In the Lyman direction, Russian invaders were making attempts to improve their tactical position and conducted unsuccessful offensive actions near the Serebryansk forestry. The enemy launched artillery strikes on the Luhansk region's Stelmakivka, Nevsky, Dubrova and Bilohorivka, and the Donetsk region's Ivanivka, Verkhnyokamyansk and Spern. In the Bakhmut direction, fierce battles for the city of Bakhmut continue. Ukrainian defenders repelled 22 enemy attacks. In the Avdiivka direction, Russian troops were conducting offensive actions near the Donetsk region's Kamyanka, Pervomaisk and Nevelsky but had no success. In the Marinka direction, Ukraine's defense forces repelled numerous enemy attacks near the Donetsk region's Marinka and Pobeda. In the Shakhtarsk direction, Russian invaders conducted unsuccessful offensive actions near Prekostivka and Vuhledar. In the Zaporizhia and Kherson directions, Russian occupiers continue holding defense. Over 40 settlements, which are situated close to the contact line, came under enemy fire, namely the Donetsk regions Vermivka and Novopil, the Zaporizhia regions Chervon, Huliaipol, Malotokmichka and Oriki, the Kherson regions Kherson, Berislav, Ivanivka and Vesel. In certain settlements within the Kherson region's temporarily occupied areas, Russian troops intensified counter-sabotage measures, as they are afraid of information leaks regarding the deployment of Russian military units. The number of patrols increased, and civilian checks became more frequent. According to the available data, during such inspections, Russians take an opinion poll and offer local residents to join the ranks of the Russian army. Units of the Ukrainian armed forces have repelled more than 55 enemy attacks over the past day. The Ukrainian Air Force launched 7 strikes on Russian manpower clusters, while units of the missile troops and artillery struck 2 areas where enemy personnel and equipment were concentrated. The General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine said this in a morning update, Ukrinform reports. Despite heavy losses, the enemy continues to wage its war of aggression. They focus their main efforts on conducting offensive operations in the Lyman, Bakhmut, Avdiivka, Marinka, and Shakhtarsk areas. Over the past day, units of the Defense Forces of Ukraine repelled more than 55 enemy attacks on the indicated sectors of the front. The fiercest battles for Bakhmut and Marinka are ongoing, the report says. The Ukrainian Air Force launched 7 strikes on the areas where the occupiers were concentrated, while units of the missile forces and artillery hit 2 clusters of enemy manpower, weapons and military equipment, as well as 2 Russian ammunition depots. In the Avdiivka direction, the enemy conducted unsuccessful offensive operations in the Avdiivka, Vodian and Pervomaisk districts. Russian forces shelled Novokolinov, Avdiivka, Tonenk, Severn, Netayla, Pervomaisk and Nevelsky in Donetsk region. In the Marinka direction, Ukrainian defenders repelled numerous enemy attacks in the areas of Marinka and Pobeda settlements. However, Krasnohorivka, Heorhivka, Marinka, and Novomikhailivka in Donetsk region came under enemy fire. In the Shakhtarsk direction, the enemy conducted unsuccessful offensive operations in the Vuhledar area. In addition to the latter, they shelled Novokrainka, Prekostivka and Vlika Novosilka in Donetsk region. Continues to conduct defensive operations. At the same time, they shelled more than 35 settlements over the past day, including Olhaivsky, Malinivka, Orikhi, Novodanilivka and Novoandriivka in Zaporizhia region, Dubchiny, Kachkarivka, Zimivka, Ivanivka, Injunern and Dniprovsky in Kherson region and the city of Kherson. As reported by Ukrinform, since the full-scale invasion, the armed forces of Ukraine have eliminated 183,750 Russian invaders, including 620 soldiers over the past day alone. Ukraine attempts to break Russian lines with new equipment ahead of expected counter-offensive. Ukrainian forces probed Russian lines in the south of the country in apparent preparation for an anticipated counter-offensive. Russian officials said the Ukrainians mounted 2 successive attacks in the Zaporizhia region overnight on Wednesday, but were repulsed by tanks. After artillery preparation, an AFU Armed Forces of Ukraine armored group went on the offensive near the town of Orikhiv in the Palahi district of Zaporizhia region, said Vladimir Rogov, a member of the Russian-installed Council of Occupied Zaporizhia region. Most likely the enemy was probably our defenses on this part of the front, but now they're doing it after dark. They may have received new night equipment, he wrote on Telegram. Ukraine's general staff did not immediately respond to the Russian claims. It does not generally comment on operations until they are over. It was not immediately clear what night equipment Mr. Rogov may have been referring to. Ukrainian units have long operated a plethora of night vision and thermal imaging equipment, much of it bought on the open market by volunteers. They have conducted nighttime operations throughout the war. Some Western-provided equipment, like Javelin anti-tank missiles, work better at night because their thermal sights find it easier to distinguish targets in the cold. The United States listed unspecified night vision equipment in a $2.5 billion aid package announced in January. Jack Watling, an expert on land warfare at the Royal United Services Institute, said modern, high-grade kit for most Ukrainian units would be nice to have and might work in even darker conditions, but is unlikely to change the kind of operations you can undertake. Ukraine's government says it is preparing a counter-offensive this spring to retake ground occupied by Russia, but has refused to discuss timing or location of the strike. But speculation among both Russian and Ukrainian commentators has focused on a possible strike southwards to cut the land bridge linking Donbass with the Crimea. Mr. Rogov earlier claimed Ukrainian forces had been observed concentrating near the border of the Zaporizhia and Donetsk regions. Last month, Ukraine struck a rail depot electricity infrastructure in Melitopol, a key logistics hub on the land bridge. The strikes were widely interpreted as shaping operations for a coming offensive. Hanna Maliar, a deputy Ukrainian defense minister, on Wednesday rebuffed requests for a timeline for the offensive, citing national security. It is important to understand that there will be no day when the armed forces will say, "Tomorrow we will launch a counter-offensive," she told national Ukrainian broadcaster during an interview on Wednesday. This is impossible in a time of war because this is classified information. She said the offensive would involve multiple operations and was being planned so, the enemy does not have time to react to it. It came as the White House on Wednesday announced a new package of artillery ammunition for Ukraine as the pro-Western country gears up for an expected counter-offensive against Russian invasion. Karine Jean-Pierre, the U.S. press secretary, said the package will include ammunition for the HIMARS multiple rocket system and artillery rounds. Details were to come later from the Pentagon. The package will include more ammunition for U.S.-provided HIMARS rocket systems and anti-armor systems, as well as additional artillery rounds, Ms. Jean-Pierre said. The United States is leading an unprecedented effort by NATO and other allied countries to supply Ukraine with weaponry and other aid as the country pushes back against a Russian onslaught that began in February 2022. Ukraine is preparing an attempt at a counter-offensive driving Russians back from swaths of occupied territory in the east and south of the country.